Welcome to the Winers. Welcome, Jeff Norman. Welcome, Scott Ritter, and welcome, world. So, Jeff, what is the occasion for this wine that we see in our opening tonight?
Do you mean the number one wine of the year? Is that what you're asking about?
That one.
Now, why would we be touting that? Let me think about that. Could it be because we recently celebrated our 200th episode of Ask the Inspector, and our pal Scott acknowledged that milestone by sending it to me? Could that be the reason?
Oh, my goodness. Scott.
Number one.
Scott, this is not...
Is that why you picked it out?
I had no clue.
Wait.
What I did is I went on there. I looked up places that would deliver wine, and
that's a good start. Yeah, and then I called them up, expecting them to take the order. Say, "Oh no, you have to do it online," which automatically meant that we were in trouble. But I went online and I'm navigating through, and when it comes time to order, they only give me 4 selections, and they're like cheap bottles. I mean, relatively cheap. And I'm like, oh, come on, man, I can do better than this. This is the 200th anniversary or 200th episode. So I hit the best of the cheap bottles. And then as I go to check out, they go, might we suggest the following wine with your order? And they suggested this, and they suggested several. And I went, pick the most expensive one. Apparently, because the more you spend, the better the wine should be. And apparently, I picked the right door. So, well, Scott is talking about Total Wine. That's a national store. And I went on their website and looked at it. And I saw that they have a list of the top 20 wines of 2024. And this happens to be number one. And
well, you did a better job of navigating their website than I did.
And let's also, here's something else. It comes from Paso Robles, California. And just here, we're military guys, so we'll look at the battle map of Paso Robles between San Jose and Los Angeles, and it's a sunny, hot location. So what happens is those grapes get nice and juicy from getting all that hot sun. They get big, and so it's a good wine.
What's the soil like, though? I mean, when you pick the soil up and you rub it, what's it smell like? What, does it give off a vanilla, cinnamon type thing?
I think it gives off a jamminess.
Okay.
I love these adjectives. I don't think I want
chocolate. It gives chocolate, tobacco, leather, fruit.
Now, aren't you drinking a Paso Robles wine also?
Well, so what I'm drinking, I actually wrote an article about this. I'm drinking We the People. It's also a Cabernet Sauvignon, and it is made here in America. Also, this is it's from California. I actually don't know. It's from Napa, actually.
Oh, okay. I thought you said it was specifically Paso Robles.
No, it was not. Yours is Paso Robles, which is a pretty good wine. The one thing I like about this one is they contribute some of their money to the Working Warrior Foundation to help family members of Special Forces guys who've fallen in battle, and it's a very good wine.
All right. Well, so is
I'm drinking a delicious bouquet.
What vintage? What vintage?
I'm pretty sure this is a 2024 vintage. It might even be like a late September. I think the soil around the Stamford, Connecticut bottling plant is particularly acidic, probably from acid rain and the various chemicals that spill out. But it provides a unique tang.
Oh, yeah.
Does it have a nice long finish?
Whatever, man. It's got a finish.
And when you stick your nose in it, does it give you a good bouquet?
It tickles my nose. Yeah, the bouquet tickles my nose.
Well, we're celebrating not only our 200th episode, but a couple days ago, it was Ryan's 50th birthday. So happy birthday to you, Ryan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
If I knew, I'd have brought my singing voice, but I won't do that to you. So.
Oh, yeah, that would be terrible.
Get any good gifts?
Let's see here. You know, it was, I went bowling because my niece also, she just turned 18, and I had raised her for a while here with us, and so we went bowling. I killed it. I beat everybody. So
What'd you
there
bowl?
go. I'm trying. Let's see. I think I bowled. It was like 111. So
People who don't
pretty
bowl
good.
don't understand actually how not bad that is. I mean,
Okay.
because if you in order to get those really high scores, you've got to string a lot of strikes and spares together. And if you're not out bowling on a regular basis, you ain't stringing a lot of strikes and spares together.
that's right. Well, and then my nephew's girlfriend promptly won the whole second round too, but she didn't get 111. I think she was 107. And
So
then
you were high score.
Yeah, I was a high scorer. That's
There you
right.
go.
I beat all these teenagers.
Hey, at 50, that's an accomplishment.
There you go. There you go. And then, unfortunately, now it was also Pat, my wife's birthday. Won't say how old she was. She's October 7th. Putin is she's the 6th. Putin is the 7th, and I'm the 8th. So it's a good little
happy birthday
sandwich
to
there.
Pat.
Yeah.
You had an unfortunate occurrence on your birthday, though.
Yeah. Actually, the first unfortunate element was that we were driving to the airport to come home on my birthday, as opposed to just extending that vacation. And then the other side of it was we got rear-ended, almost took out that rear tire. It was just a few inches there. So we're okay. We checked in with the doctor and got all of our x-rays today. So we're all kind of hurt. No one was drinking. It was breakfast time. Not that means you can't drink or anything, but we were driving to the airport to come home. So we'll be fine in about a week or so. So the lady was going to can you imagine being in a rush to jury duty? She was in a rush to jury duty. Well,
Not because she liked it, maybe because she didn't want to get scolded by the judge.
yeah, because you have to sit there, right? So anyway, that's what happened then. But I also got an award, and I think this is it's a very telling award. It actually talks about my muscularity and my intelligence, and this award from you, Jeff, and Scott, and an absolutely beautiful award. That's how I characterize it.
It's fake news, though.
Fake
Because
news.
there's no way in hell that you're going to be able to press that much weight. That's 185 according to my calculations.
Yep. Oh, wait a second. Oh, I misread it. My eyes are so bad. I couldn't tell.
Truth in advertising.
So thank you
Let me
very
just
much for
give
that.
a shout out to Marty at Crown Trophy in Austin, who made this for us on very short notice, and not only that, delivered it to Ryan's estate, his sprawling compound.
It was a shock, and it was a wonderful gift. It's almost, I feel like I'm enjoying this with the world, this birthday.
Well,
But
good.
you
Well,
got an additional gift, Ryan.
I did?
Yeah, it's that custom scoped
Oh,
AR-15 in the background that I mailed you, and then along with the target,
Yeah.
you see the target up even higher. It looks like a book. It looks like a book that might have been written by me. Yeah, I sent that to you so you could shoot at it. And
it's being protected by Benjamin Franklin and Ulysses.
I saw
S.
Ulysses'
Grant.
portrait. That looks like it. I think I know an artist that paints similar pictures to that.
Absolutely. You're going to see yours too soon. I can't wait.
All right, we should mention tomorrow night on Ask the Inspector, Rachel Blevins is our guest, and that's at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to endeavor to make tonight somewhat different so it doesn't come across as just another episode of Ask the Inspector. By the way, it's getting more and more popular. I saw just yesterday somebody made the most meticulous Russian translation of Ask the Inspector I've ever seen. They were interpreting not only Scott, but starting with the intro. You know how the we have that audio clip. We're saying, go to your posts, report to your posts. Yeah, they even translated that. Then they were translating me and you, Scott, in different voices. Let me just play a few seconds of this. I've never seen it this meticulous.
Все подразделения приступают к выполнению своих задач. Все подразделения приступают к выполнению своих заданий.
Скотти в ударе.
Да, детка, это эпизод 201, который я попросил у инспектора 8 октября 2024 года. Не знаю, нравится ли мне цифра 201. Она означает, что мы далеки от следующей важной вехи. Было так здорово отпраздновать 200-й эпизод. Не думаю, что 201-й — это важная веха или 202-й.
Это все шаги в правильном направлении.
Wow.
Да?
It's two
It
different
sounds like
voices, right? Isn't that two different voices?
Well, it's two different sounding voices. I mean, I come off as very calm and serious, and you come off as chirpy.
Wait, it sounded just like you. I couldn't tell. I sounded just like the two of you. I couldn't tell at all that it was a voiceover.
Except that if it was me, he speaks his Russian's too good. It couldn't have been me.
But now that you mention it being calm, I want to listen to the rest of it because you also, let's say, slightly lost your temper a couple of times. So I wonder if he reenacted that. When we were talking about Trump, you might remember that. But is that translation good though, Scott? Because you speak some Russian.
Let me ask Siri, is that translation good?
It sounds right.
According to Siri, who wasn't unable to hear the original English, it sounded pretty good.
All right.
Well, now, see, I don't know. The fact that you had to ask Siri, I have some doubts now because when I read your book, you said you were in Russia. You're an expert in Russia. I saw the video of you. Was that in Grozny where you were talking to 25,000 Chechens, right? So I said to Jeff, I said, I'm not buying this. This sounds like fake news. It was probably AI. And I thought, I'm going to challenge Scott on his Russian. I'm studying Russian, so I said, let's. So I have a brief quiz. Maybe we'll only go once on this right now. But I was going to show it, but I think I better show it and read it.
But Jeff, save me! I thought you were going to show me losing my temper in Russian.
Well, wait,
That's
just wait.
coming. That's coming.
That's coming.
This is a setup. You guys have worked this out. You're setting me up. Okay, I got it.
All right. Here we go. So this is a brief moment of Stump the Inspector. I'm going to read it in Russian, and you have to translate it. I have one hint in the first phrase. So here we go. The first phrase for $100 is «Можно все время дурачить некоторых». Можно некоторое время дурачить всех, но нельзя все время дурачить всех. I'm not going to say who it's by. What is the quote?
Abraham Lincoln, you can fool some of the people some of the time, all the people all the time, but none of the people all the time.
All right. Whoa. Woo. Okay. Darn. Okay. The last one for $200 is, now let's see if I can say it now. I've had a little bit of wine, so it should go better. Когда неприятель делает ошибку, не следует ему мешать. Это невежливо. Who said those words?
Napoleon Bonaparte said it.
And what did he
According
say?
to the writing, he
Yes.
said, "Когда, when, неприятно, when it's not pretty, when."
Oh, whoa. There's, you
неприятно,
get a call. You're getting help.
She's getting the pronunciation correctly. Неприятно делать is to do a mistake. When you make a mistake, it следует ему мешать. It basically saying Scott Ritter is dumber than dirt, and he doesn't read Russian very well at all.
Here we go. This is when an enemy makes a mistake, you should not interfere with him. It is impolite.
See, I thank you for not interfering with me as I was making a mistake.
All right.
So you owe Ryan $200.
$200, but then you won 100, so I will gladly take $100.
Now, when you go on game shows and like at Jeopardy, and you say, "I'll take men with strange hats for 100," and you don't get it right, I don't have to pay Jeopardy money. So I don't know why you think I have to pay you money.
Well, you lost 100, so that's true. You get $100.
Okay, now I'm happy.
I'll send you $100 in Operation Dawn coins.
That would be 5.
5 coins. Whoa.
I'm a master at math. I may not be good at Russian, but I'm a master at math. I'm going to get drunk here. This is going to be a tough evening. You guys are picking on me.
All right. Now it's time for Rebut the Inspector. On the last episode of Ask the Inspector, you harshly criticized my friend Donald Trump, as is your wont, because according to you, he said he wants to launch a nuclear attack on Iran. Now, at that time, I had not yet heard what he said, so I just sat there like a mummy and assumed you were correct. But then I went and listened to it, and I don't think he said that at all. I think he said he just wants to hit their nuclear stuff, but not with a nuclear attack. But let's look at, I just made it very brief. This is what you said on, where the hell is it? Hold on a second. There it is. This is what you said.
He's out there saying the dumbest things in the world, Jeff. He's talking about using nuclear weapons against Iran. He's talking about using nuclear weapons against Iran. At a time when I'm saying no to nuclear war, the candidate for the presidency is actively talking about using nuclear weapons for Iran. How the hell do you think I'm supposed to respond to that? It's automatically disqualifying. Automatically disqualifying. That doesn't mean that I think Kamala Harris is going to be any better. She's not. But if Trump wants to be the commander in chief, he needs to walk that statement back. He needs to say, no, that's not what I said. I didn't mean to say that. That's a misunderstanding. You can't sit there on the one hand and say the greatest danger to America in the world is nuclear weapons, and then say, I'm going to nuke Iran.
And he didn't say that. Should we take a look at what he said?
You can try, but I'm going to I would advise you not to go down this route, because you're actually entering into my strength. And
all right.
You're going to make a fool out of yourself, but that's okay. We're here to have fun.
Well,
so
yes, we are.
You can try and make a fool out of me, and I will do my best to be polite in my rebuttal to your rebuttal.
All right. Well, I am a bit of a masochist, so it won't be that bad. But
okay.
Let me preface it by saying that I think there may be some room for criticizing Trump, but I don't think he said he's going to launch a nuclear attack. Maybe it's too dangerous to take out, their nuclear stuff, whatever that is. Maybe there's other things to criticize him on. But anyway, this is what he said.
What do you think about Iran when you hit Iran? And he goes, as long as they don't hit the nuclear stuff. That's the thing you want to hit, right? I said, I think he's got that one wrong. Isn't that the one you're supposed to hit? I mean, it's the biggest risk we have. Nuclear weapons, the power of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt the entire military, jets, everything. I built it, including nuclear, and I hated to build the nuclear, but I got to know firsthand the power of that stuff, and I'll tell you what.
All right, well, that's what he said. So go ahead, make a fool of me. Hold on, we don't hear you.
Wait, whoa. Hold on, you're muted.
Mic's muted.
My dogs were barking, so I was trying to save us from.
Well, if you're going to make a fool of me, maybe it's good to mute your microphone.
Well, when he says to hit the nuclear, what do you think that means?
I think there's a question. I don't know. How is he going to hit it?
Well, okay, but you want to hit it. Does that mean you want to touch it? You want to give it a love slap, a little polite?
No, it means some kind of
you want to destroy it.
Destroy it? Military attack. Some kind of military attack. Yes.
To destroy, then, right?
And question, real quick, is he talking power or weapons? Attacking their weapons or attacking or everything?
He's talking weapons.
All right.
Yeah, he asked me the
First
same
of all,
thing earlier today, and he's
against
still
international law to strike a nuclear power plant.
All right.
I mean, not that Donald Trump cares. The Firdos nuclear plant, which he would want to strike, that's one of the big ones, the big underground. Here's the hint: underground nuclear power, underground nuclear enrichment. Firdos. There's not a conventional weapon in the American arsenal that can destroy it. Donald Trump knows this because when he was the president of the United States,
modified the nuclear employment plan to adapt specific weaponry to strike that. The weapons that can only be used to strike that plant are nuclear weapons, a modified version of the B-61 bomb or the W-76-2 low-yield nuclear weapon. Donald Trump knows this because he wrote the plan. He's the one who put it in. He said, I had to do nuclear thing. I didn't want to do it, but I did it. He did it because he was planning on striking Iranian nuclear targets, knowing that the only weapons that could destroy them are nuclear weapons. So when he's up there talking about hitting them, he's saying, because he knows it, because he designed it, he planned it, to hit it with nuclear weapons because it's the only thing that can destroy Natanz or Firdos. So that's why I got pissed off, because I know what Donald Trump knows. I know what Donald Trump did, and I know what Donald Trump meant when he said that. That's why I went off then.
Okay, so I'm not that far off. I said I suspect there is something to criticize him about. He said essentially the same thing again on a podcast 2 days ago. And I think that he couldn't possibly, it wouldn't make any sense for him to be saying that he wants to make a nuclear attack, because in the exact same breath, he said he's against nuclear war. Here's what he said 2 days ago. I played the first one because that's what he had said the day before you and I talked about it. But then the day after, here's what he said.
Said yesterday when they talked about should they hit Iran's nuclear, no, you shouldn't do that. I said, no, it's sort of just the opposite, because the nuclear is the biggest threat we have in the world today. It's not global warming where the oceans are rising 1/8 of an inch in the next 500 years.
Right.
The threat that we have, the biggest threat, is nuclear war.
Yeah. You seem concerned about that.
I am, because it only takes one. We were close to a deal for getting rid of nuclear weapons. It would be so good.
For all countries or just Russia?
We were talking about Russia, ourselves, and China.
Oh, wow.
And we would then bring everyone else into it. And
so you all would get rid of your nuclear capabilities?
Denuclearize, yes. We were going to get rid
Totally
of
denuclearized.
nuclear because it's too powerful.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah.
He's lying.
What?
Didn't happen. Didn't fucking happen.
Yeah, but that's another criticism.
I'm just telling you, the Russians came out and said, fuck that. That conversation never fucking happened. What he was proposing, he had a guy that said, if you want to talk the intermediate nuclear forces treaty, which Trump backed out of, by the way, Mr. I don't want a nuclear war, but let's fucking destabilize Europe by getting rid of the one treaty that saved Europe from a nuclear war so we can put nuclear armed intermediate range missiles back in and recreate the entire 1980s all over again. Donald fucking Trump. He said, if we're going to talk INF, we have to talk Chinese. And they also told the Russians, if we're going to have these strategic talks, we have to have the Chinese. And the Russians went, that's between you and fucking China. Keep us the fuck out of it. Okay, we have our strategic relationship with you, and you know what our conditions are. You haven't met them, so pound sand. The Chinese told Trump, fuck off. So Trump's in there saying, we were so fucking close to get... He's lying through his teeth. The Russians just called him out on it. The man is a habitual fucking liar. And again, when you say you're going to hit Iran, Donald Trump knows it because he signed off on it. His presidential nuclear employment guidance was adapted to the nuclear employment plan, called for creating 2 new categories of nuclear weapons, specifically for the purpose of taking out Iran's underground nuclear facilities, because there is no conventional weapon in the arsenal of the United States that can do that. So when he says to hit nuclear, he means hit it with nuclear. That's the God's honest truth. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I wish the people that talked to Trump did their homework first and called him out on that. And I wish that other guy called. Donald Trump said, what had happened is the movie Reagan came out. And Donald Trump probably had somebody watch Reagan and said, man, that was a powerful scene in the movie when Reagan sat down across from Gorbachev and Reykjavik, and they said, let's get rid of nuclear weapons. How many? All of them. Oh, powerful moment. So Donald Trump sat there and made up his own fucking powerful moment. He is a liar. He met with Vladimir Putin one time and Putin kicked his ass. Did you see the picture of him coming out of the one-on-one meeting to the press conference? Putin striding out there like he just is the Met cargo, and Donald Trump like this, because he tried to play that Donald Trump shit to Vladimir Putin, and Vladimir Putin sitting them pack and saying, we don't play that kind of game, Donnie. I'm the fucking president of Russia. You treat me like a fucking equal. Don't come in here with your Donald Trump handshake and bullshit. I don't play that game. And he kicked Trump's ass. Trump didn't get anything he wanted from that meeting. And the idea that now he's going to say that he brokered some sort of denuclearization, bullshit, liar. And this is what makes him dangerous.
Right.
I have a question about that, actually. I'm not contradicting what you're saying, but you also had this other side. Well, there's two things, actually, with North Korea, where he was doing all this tough guy stuff, and then he actually went over there, and at least what we saw in the public when we saw that was rather extraordinary, where you had some kind of a meeting that at least began to go in a completely different direction. Is that maybe what he's playing here, or what would you say?
But that was purely him in North Korea. And if you've watched me talk about Donald Trump, that's one of the few times I come out and say that was presidential.
But this is not that, is what you're saying.
This is not that. No, this is something completely different. He brought in a guy named Marshall Billingsley. And he made him the senior arms control guy. And Billingsley went in with all sorts of crazy bullshit and telling the Russians, fuck you, we're not going to have talks with you. You have to bring in the Chinese. The Russians went, that's between you and China. China is what we call a sovereign state. China doesn't work for Russia, take instructions from Russia, in no way beholden to Russia. If you want to talk arms control with China, that's between you and China. But it is not right now a three-way negotiation. The history of Soviet-American negotiations and Russian-American negotiations, bilateral relations. That's what we base this on. If you want to bring in the Chinese, that's a whole different thing, but you got to do the heavy lifting on that one. We're not going to do it. And Billingsley was the most incompetent motherfucker to be put in there. Again, he's the kind of guy you put in when you want to deliberately sabotage something. So if Donald Trump is saying, I believed in arms control, he wouldn't have brought in Marshall Billingsley, because Marshall Billingsley doesn't believe in arms control. Remember, it's under the Trump administration that the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense before the Arms Control Association said it is the policy of the Trump administration to have the Russian and Chinese leadership wake up every morning not knowing whether or not today is the day America is going to nuke them. That's the real Donald Trump, because that's the fat little fuck that sits in the White House and says exactly that. I prefer they don't wake up, and I want uncertainty. I want uncertainty. Well, you know what happens with uncertainty? Mistakes, misjudgments, and now read Annie Jacobson's book. Right. 72 minutes later, the whole world's destroyed. Thank you, Donald Trump, you dumb motherfucker. I don't pull any punches on this because this is terminal. You know, you can fuck around with the economy. Every president has. And, you know, we survived that. You can fuck around with social policy. We survived that. We've survived 4 years of bad presidents. We've survived 8 years of bad presidents. And we can survive 4 and 8 years of bad presidency again. We can't survive a nuclear war. Donald Trump, if he continues this kind of insanity, making shit up in his head, talking about hitting Iranian nuclear weapons. And here's another news flash for Donald fucking Trump. You ready for this, America? Iran has nuclear weapons. Iran has nuclear weapons. Now, they haven't assembled them yet, but you don't get the 3 senior level announcements out of Iran talking about the reversal of the Supreme Leader's fatwa under the conditions, unless the Supreme Leader said, these are the conditions under which I will reverse my fatwa. And you don't sit there and talk about going nuclear unless you've already put those components in place. Now, they haven't tested it. I'm not saying they did, because it requires a diversion of the uranium hexafluoride that hasn't occurred yet. But that they can divert that, enrich that in 5 days. And then they will be able to, about 3 days later, have the metal, and they can put a gun device and have a nuclear bomb on top of a missile in a week and a half. And Donald Trump said he will never allow that to happen. You know what would have prevented that from happening? The JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which was in place to prevent exactly that fucking scenario. And Donald Trump withdrew from it. And now, thanks to that, Iran is able to build 3 to 5 nuclear weapons less than 2 weeks. And they're ready to do it because of dumb fucking stupidity that began with Donald Trump and has continued with Joe Biden. Anytime you hear an American say, we will never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, they have it. They have it because of us. And there's nothing we can fucking do about it now. Because once you got the nuke, you can't nuke them.
Okay, Scott, I have two comeback questions. One is, and somebody in our chat also brought this up. You had Kennedy, and DJT Jr. wrote that article in The Hill about the danger of nuclear war. So you have that voice of sanity there. Why can't they increase the pressure to, walk back, just get away from this? Donald Trump, RFK Jr., people expect him to be saying that. So that's one question I have. Yeah.
There's a backstory to this article, but I don't know if I want to get into it. All
right.
It's not what
it would be an exclusive for the whiners.
That's true.
I'll give it to you. I wrote that fucking thing. I started that. I'm the one who wrote a draft and sent it to somebody, and that turned into that article. All right? That's what happened. If anybody challenges me on it, I've got the original. You compare it word for word. Now, they had to turn it, get it approved, but that initiative didn't come from within. It came from without, and thank God they ran with it. But I'm beginning to doubt whether Donald Trump was cognizant of that. I was hopeful that it would bleed into him and make things happen, but clearly it didn't, because this guy's talking shit. That means that whatever sanity went through the minds of Donald Trump Jr. and RFK Jr. in writing this and getting this out there, that sanity didn't translate in, because Donald Trump's saying the dumbest things in the world right now, the most dangerous things in the world right now. It's very, very scary what he's saying, because this is a guy who actually took George W. Bush's nuclear preemption doctrine that was created after 9/11 and made it worse. Actually put deliverable nuclear weapons in the hands of the military with a plan to use them preemptively if necessary. And one of the key preemptive targets they were going to hit is Iran's nuclear facilities. That's why these weapons were made, to preemptively strike Iran's nuclear facilities. But then he pulls out of the JCPOA, the one thing that would have prevented Iran from doing any of this, and now Iran has fucking nuclear weapons. And if you're sitting there saying, I stand with Israel, you better go tell Donald Trump to shut the fuck up. Because if he continues to encourage Israel to attack Iran, Israel will disappear tomorrow. And then when Iran does something stupid like strike Iran with a nuclear weapon, then Israel totally disappears with 3 to 5 nuclear weapons that'll take it off the face of the earth. That's where we stand right now because of Donald fucking Trump, the most dangerous man in America today. Literally. Joe fucking Biden isn't as stupid as Donald Trump, and Joe Biden's got dementia. At least Joe Biden right now is trying to stop the genocide. A little late, but he's, did you see what happened today?
At the UN, the U.S. ambassador came out, and she said they got to get out of Gaza. It's late, but why?
Because Biden was telling the Israelis that if you don't strike Iran, we got the big deal for you. We will have your diplomatic back. You will never have a problem with the United Nations again, and we will give you all the weapons you want. Just don't go forward with the stupidity of hitting Iran. And
he was saying something like that fucking asshole. He said Netanyahu was a fucking asshole or something like that behind closed doors.
And Netanyahu told him to pound sand. And so the first thing that happens is this ambassador, who previously had been saying the exact opposite, suddenly has to read. I don't feel sorry for her, but it had to be one of those embarrassing moments where you've been playing the hard line. Suddenly you get the instruction from the State Department. You got to go before the Security Council of the United Nations and eat shit and read this, because it's the exact opposite of what we're doing. But it's a signal to Israel that says, we warned you. And you're going to see more and more pressure. Why? Because Joe Biden doesn't want a fucking nuclear war. Joe Biden understands what's going on, or somebody near Joe Biden understands this. I think even Kamala Harris is beginning to understand, although she says stupid things too. But she understands that this, she talks about Israel's right to self-defense, but they know the consequences. They've been briefed on.
But I haven't heard her say anything about it. And Jill Stein, I haven't heard. I went and looked up the latest.
Jill Stein, yeah, she should do better.
They're not talking about it even.
No,
actually, turn our attention to Operation Dawn. I mean, we brought that up not just to challenge you, Scott, but because the mission. And by the way, I just want to say that I don't know what you know, and given that I don't know what you know, I think my interpretation was reasonable, which is he did say he's against using nuclear weapons. So that's why I said to myself, it doesn't make sense for him to be in the same breath saying that he's going to launch nuclear weapons against Iran. That's why I interpret it that way. And if I were the one who was, even though I'm an idiot, if I were the one interviewing him, I would have known enough to say, well, what do you mean by hit it? Hit it how? I would have asked him that. But anyway, the reason
and maybe you would have called up your good friend Scott and said, hey, could you put together a background paper on what it means to hit Iranian nuclear sites? And then I would have put it all, and then you could have asked them, but when you were president, didn't you do a nuclear employment plan that called for the adaptation of 2 new kinds of nuclear weapons specifically to preemptively strike Iran's so when you're talking about hitting Iran's what do you mean, Mr. President? Because you yourself know, because you authorize these nuclear weapons and we can't take it out conventionally. So what do you mean, Mr. President? How are you going to take it out?
Right. So here's what makes Operation Dawn a little bit complicated as I see it. Maybe by talking about it, we can get some clarity here. The mission is to put pressure on the presidential candidates so that they prioritize preventing a nuclear war. So here we have Trump kind of saying what you want him to say, but at the same time, you're saying, well, it doesn't make sense because he's saying these other things that conflict with it. So I guess it's not enough for him to say what you want to say. We need the presidential candidates to demonstrate a real understanding of it without contradicting themselves somehow. Is that a fair way of putting it?
And the best way to do that is to confront him on his bullshit. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're too late in the game to be Gentleman Jims and, Nancy Nice. It's he lied. So you need to say, you're a fucking liar. Stop lying. Now, what you're saying is sort of cool, Mr. President. You want to denuclearize it. Okay, don't make up a backstory that never happened. Tell me what you're going to do when you do become president. You want to denuclearize. You got RFK Jr. right there. His uncle, Jack Kennedy, in 1961, created an entity called the Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. And the purpose of ACTA was to put forward arms control as one of the top policy priorities of the United States. And that's how we got all the arms control treaties that we got, the ones that you backed out of, you son of a bitch. Now, why don't we unfuck what you fucked and create a new arms control disarmament agency? Do you plan on doing that, Mr. President? How do you plan to denuclearize? Because this isn't going to happen because Donald J. Trump's a fucking genius and is going to do it by himself. You need to have good people and staffs that do this full fucking time. How do you plan on doing that, Mr. President? Tell me. Clock's running. And I'm not going to cut you any slack. If you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, I'm going to tell you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And maybe you go find somebody who fucking knows what the fuck they're talking about so you can come back here and correct the fucking record. Because you want to be commander-in-chief again? Not after you just threatened to nuke Iran. Fuck you. Fuck off. That's how I would handle it. And then force him to come up with sound policy. I really need Jill Stein to step up to the table here because Jill Stein is the best way to get to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris isn't going to react to Donald Trump, all right, because she's in a life and death struggle with him. If Jill Stein came out and put forward policy specifically, about how she would do this, and people started to be attracted to that, Trump supporters started gravitating over, Biden supporters started gravitating, Kamala then would have to commit to something. And maybe then she could put something. And now that's what we want is a bidding war. That's what Operation Dawn is. Less than 30 days to an election. Maybe it has a little whiff of desperation. When you're in the
situation's desperate. The situation's
desperate. Middle of the fucking ocean, treading water, praying for a cruise ship to show up over the horizon. You're fucking desperate. But you're still going to be treading water because you hope the cruise ship comes up and rescues you before you drown. This country is in the middle of the goddamn ocean treading water. And somebody better come to our rescue, because if they don't, and we put some dipshit motherfucker who thinks it's okay to hit Iran's nuclear sites with nuclear weapons, because that's the only thing we got that can do it, then we have a nuclear war. And Israel disappears. For all those people out there say, I stand with Israel, understand, he is literally signing the death warrant for Israel. Literally signing it. It's permanent destruction of Israel. It's gone forever. 3 to 5 nuclear weapons, Israel is finished. So that's Donald Trump. Biden and Harris, they're just incompetent and stupid. There'll be genocide in Palestine, but I actually don't think that she's going to get us involved. She will continue. She wants to continue the idiocy in Ukraine. All that means is more dead Ukrainians and Russia wins the war. She's not going to sign off on long-range strike weapons because she's received the same briefings that Biden's received that said if you do that, Russia retaliates and it's nuclear war. She understands that. And she understands she's actually has a stronger position against Israel than Biden does. She just can't fully articulate it. So she's not looking for a war, even though she called Iran the number one threat. She didn't say hit their nuclear facilities. So as much as I despise Kamala Harris, and I truly do despise her,
she's less of a threat at this point in time to the existential survival of the United States of America than Donald Trump is, because I define existential survival in nuclear terms. All this other shit we'll live through. I mean, it's going to be tough. The economy may not do great or do great. Who knows? But we'll survive that. We can't survive a nuclear war. We can't.
And that's why Putin said that he was nominally for Biden, because at least he was somebody that you could reliably count on to do what he's doing, as opposed to.
Yeah,
isn't that
Putin,
why he said that?
Well, I think what first of all, the Russians have been loath, from my understanding, to throw the head at. He was trolling big time when he said he was supporting Kamala, because that was just pure troll work. 100%. I think Dmitry Medvedev finally got to him, and Putin decided he was going to do some better trolling than Medvedev was doing. But
he did a good one, yeah.
What I heard from and Anatoly Antonov, the ambassador, to former ambassador, because he's gone home now, and we don't have a replacement yet. What he told me back starting in December of 2022, he said what the most important thing for the Russians is predictability. That from a diplomacy and foreign policy standpoint, predictability is the most important thing, because that's how you can make solid policy. He said we would rather have somebody who is predictably anti-Russian, because then we can, we're not happy with that, but now we know what policies we have to embark on, and we can build the appropriate responses. Than to have somebody who's just chaotic, all over the map. 1 minute we want to be your best friend, on the other minute we're going to sanction the hell out of you.
Absolutely.
Donald Trump is the definition of chaos, and the Russians don't trust him. He came in saying he wanted to be their friends, and he left saying there's nobody stronger against Russia than me. This is a man who thinks that he can have a magic phone call with Vladimir Putin. Again, I advise people to look at the photograph of them coming into that room. Anybody who thinks that man, the defeated fat fuck who's coming out of there, can intimidate the short, spry, cocky little son of a bitch, no. Putin owned him on that one. And Putin will own him on any future encounters, which then ask yourself, then how does Donald Trump respond? He's not the kind of guy to take a punch and fall back and think about it. He counter punches. He's a counter striker. And then you start counter striking Russia, and you're going to end up in a nuclear war. Even though he says he doesn't want one, nobody wants a nuclear war. Read Annie Jacobson's book. Nobody wanted the world to end, but it goes on full fucking automatic. That's the other thing people need to understand. The nuclear employment plan is full fucking automatic. Once certain thresholds have been crossed, you can't stop it. It's over. It's going to happen. And we have come dangerously close to crossing those thresholds. September 14th could have been the last day any of us were alive. We got lucky. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life getting lucky to live? No. Predictability.
But according to Bob Woodward, Trump sent Putin COVID testing kits. How are you going to go to war with somebody who sent you COVID testing kits? Do you make anything of that? I'm sure you've heard the story that is.
I don't give a fuck.
It doesn't seem to me like it makes any difference at all, right? First of all, we don't know if it's true, and second of all, even if he did send it, what's so bad about that, right?
I'm not against it. I mean, you're trying to win goodwill. You're trying to, show that you have a heart. I mean, the Russians sent us ventilators. Does people forget about that? Why isn't the headline, Vladimir Putin sent Donald Trump ventilators? This is just bullshit. This is typical Woodward. This is typical Simon & Schuster. This is typical New York Times, Washington Post, just spinning shit up into nothing. Who the fuck cares? We were.
This is part. I mean, I agree with basically everything you say, Scott, but I don't have as deep of understanding, so I give weight to other things that maybe aren't as important. And it really just, to be honest, just gets me very riled up when the anti-Trumpers come at him from every which way. So part of where I'm coming from is it's just emotional. I just want to stick it to these assholes who, they're getting him with the lawfare and impeaching him for this and that, and the media's all against him.
I so much want to give Trump the benefit of the doubt because, again, I voted for him. I couldn't vote for him I did. I voted for him in 2016, and I voted for him again in 2020. Anybody who read what I wrote about him in the summer of 2016, I hated the guy. Absolutely despite, and I still do.
I despise John McCain, but he was a prisoner of war. And for Donald Trump to sit there and go, well, he's not a hero. He got captured. Fuck you, Donald, Mr. Bone Spur, draft dodging son of a bitch. John McCain is a drunk, alcoholic asshole that he is, at least served. Flew a fucking airplane over the wrong target, got shot down, but he served. You didn't do shit. And now you're sitting there saying shit about a wounded guy who was a prisoner of war, criticizing his service. Fuck off. And then he sat there and he attacked a Hispanic judge in California, saying that he can't be trusted to rule on the law because he's a Hispanic guy. Hey, fuck off, you white racist son of a bitch. That's how I view Donald Trump. I hate him, despise him. But then when I was confronted, when Bernie dropped out, with the reality that Hillary Clinton could be president of the United States, I had to go, oh, shit, hold my nose and pull the lever for Trump because there was no way I was putting her in the office. 2020, Joe Biden is the worst human being on the planet. I have a personal problem with Joe Biden. Yeah. I know that he's a liar. I had to hold my nose and do it again. I like the fact that Trump represents chaos to the establishment because the establishment is dragging this country down. But Donald Trump had 4 years to take on the establishment, and he didn't. In fact, he went even deeper into the establishment on some of the national security stuff. Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, McMaster. Come on. I mean, at least Flynn was a wild card, but that wild card crashed and burned early on. But everybody who came in afterwards, pure 110% establishment. Now, maybe he'll have a different crew this time. I was excited.
Well, did you ask that when you had dinner with Bobby Kennedy or had any other conversations with him? I don't want you to reveal anything private that is confidential, but I'm wondering, did you ask him for his opinion on whether or not this time around Trump is going to stay away from these deep state characters? Because that would be something on my mind.
Well, when we had dinner, remember that the big thing on his mind was trying to remain on the ballot in the state of New York, that he had not made the strategic decision to
to back Trump,
to jump.
Right.
And any conversations we had are private, so I can't talk about it. But I'll just say from a chronological standpoint, he hadn't come to cross that bridge yet. What he was thinking about and all that stuff, that's his business. It's not my business to reveal anything that we talked about at dinner.
But he has said publicly that he had a number of conversations and that that he thinks that Trump has made some changes. I mean, you mentioned Mike Pompeo. He is putting himself out there to serve in the next Trump administration, and it's just exactly what you say. These people, if Bobby's in there, maybe these people like him and McFaul will not be in there. But I don't see any other way around it other than organizing the American population to wise up, to put the pressure on to say, keep these bastards out of the White House.
I think all Trump's committed to is having Bobby and Tulsi on the, what do they call it, transition team.
The transition team, yeah.
Right. And let me tell you how important that is. Chris Christie was in charge of the transition team for Trump in 2016. And Trump went, fuck off, I don't take anything, and Chris Christie resigned. Donald Trump doesn't take advice from anybody. That's the sad fact. And I hope that history proves it wrong. I hope that he does take advice because he could do well with both RFK Jr. and Tulsi on certain issues. On other ones, it's a disaster. Israel, I mean, who the fuck can agree with anything those two say about Israel? I can't. But Trump apparently does because he stands with the Israeli flag behind himself, debasing himself to the pro-Israeli lobby on a daily basis. But
doesn't his cabinet matter, Scott? I mean, he can't really promise a cabinet position. But do you think there's a chance that RFK and or Tulsi will be in the cabinet and he'll try to push for that?
I think if Trump wins the election, he's not beholden to anybody at that point in time. I think right now he's playing a game. He thinks that RFK Jr. and Tulsi can bring voters to his cause, critical voters. Once he wins, Donald Trump comes back to being Donald Trump. And I think he'll have them on his transition team, and then he'll dismiss them, and they'll end up crashing and burning, which is sad because I think Maha, Make America Healthy Again, is a great thing. Right. And I'd love to see Bobby able to run with that.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to see
if he betrays them, then he's going to have to live with their reaction to it, and that may not be so pleasant.
He doesn't care. He's president of the United States at that point. He doesn't care.
I mean, if their reaction was so good, they'd be viable presidential candidates, but they're not. The MAGA is buying into this RFK Jr. and Tulsi thing right now, but they'll dump them quickly. Look, Chris Christie. How does MAGA treat Chris Christie right now? Not very well.
Chris who?
Thank you.
Chris who? Well, to what Jeff was saying, he brought up this so-called scandal or hoax or whatever. I have a different thought actually about why these are, and this is one of some headlines over the last number of days, which I definitely want to ask you about, but from a slightly different context. So you have the Wall Street Journal and all of the mainstream media. They're focusing on Russia, Iran, China manipulating the elections again. You have Christopher Wray coming out and saying that they, what did they do? They went after 3 Iranians for hacking the election. Did you see that statement by him? So my question is, are they putting the pressure on just because, of course, they are the establishment, they're assholes, these are more Russiagate-style hoaxes, or are they doing it from the standpoint to try to herd the chaotic Trump into doing what they want? Do you understand what I'm saying? In that, if you're kind of like throwing so much crap at him, he can't actually listen to sound advice because he's going to default to Trump being a wild man.
First of all, I don't think they're doing anything for the benefit of Donald Trump. And sometimes when you herd, you're trying to herd people in the right direction, sort of give them a nudge and all that stuff. I think the FBI and the Department of Justice and the entire intelligence community despise Donald Trump, the leadership. There might be people in the rank and file that feel differently, but the leadership despises Donald Trump because they are the establishment, and he is making noises that he could be very anti-establishment. Again, I'll believe it if he keeps RFK Jr. If he keeps RFK Jr. and brings him in, the FBI agents that are out there fucking him right now should put in their resignations and flee. I think Donald Trump will be in the vengeance mode. I'm not happy about that. I don't think America should be in the vengeance mode. But you take up the sword, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. They have made his life a living hell, and don't be surprised when he responds in a similar way. But
now, when you say keep RFK, do you mean as Attorney General, or do you mean just keep him involved in some other way?
Keep him involved. If he can keep Bobby close, where Bobby is able to talk to him on a regular basis, I think that would be fantastic. The same thing with Tulsi. To have her around it, Tulsi would make a great. Everybody's saying Secretary of State. I say no. First of all, she would have to get confirmed by the United States Senate, and she and RFK Jr. are both wild cards that probably couldn't get confirmed. She could be a national security advisor, and that's where she would be fantastic because she doesn't have to be confirmed. She is a smart cookie, and she could sit there and advise Donald Trump. If he would listen to her. That's the problem. He doesn't listen to anybody but Donald Trump. But maybe this time will be different because he has 4 years. He's not going to be trying for re-election. And if he's going to sink the swamp, he has to do it now. Yeah. The thing is, the FBI right now, first of all, I think there's people trying to hack into this show right now. I'm just saying that, there's hackers everywhere. There's amateur hackers, there's professional hackers, there's semi-professional hackers. They hack everything. And, people hack for a number of reasons. Not every hack is designed to have a national security implication. Some of it is for economic purposes, business intelligence purposes, or just for the hell of it, because they're hackers and they want to be disruptive. And so, and hackers live in every country in the world. So if you say, Chinese hackers, that doesn't necessarily mean they're from, Unit B642 of the 4th Directorate of the Shanghai Hacking, agency. It could just be some Chinese people saying, what are we going to do tonight? I don't know. Let's have some Diet Coke and go out there and see what we can do. The same thing with the Iranians. But there's also, understand this, the biggest hacking organization in the world is the National Security Agency and the Cyber Warfare Command. Okay. what the United States is accusing everybody to do, we do on a daily basis. We hack our friends, we hack our enemies, we hack our American citizens. We have the biggest hacking program operation in the world. And then we whine like little bitches when people come at us using the same thing. So anytime I hear hacking, I just throw it away because it's hypocritical. I don't want to hear Christopher Wade talk about the evil of this, that, and the other thing. Because you know what, Chris Ray, you know what you're doing. You know what the FBI is doing. You know what games you're playing with the American citizens. You're hacking us more than anybody's hacking us. You hack everything because you're a corrupt son of a bitch. And so the head of NSA and the head of Cyber Warfare Command, the CIA's has a special unit that does it. They all hack everything, including us. They have no qualms about violating our Fourth Amendment. Edward Snowden proved this, and the FISA courts have never cracked down on it. They hit us every day. They are committing Fourth Amendment violations against me as we speak. So I just throw all this hacking shit away when I see it because I hate hypocrisy and I know what we're doing to the world. And I know that whatever the world's doing to us pales in comparison. And for them to breathe fire into it, to try and scare Americans is absolute horseshit.
It's so brazen because, I think, speaking of what you're saying, right, that warrant that Jeff had shown some time ago when the FBI raided your house, they took all, 25 boxes. Have they returned those boxes that were not part of the warrant?
No.
Well, I wanted to just follow
They haven't
up.
returned my electronics.
Yeah.
Our friend Kim.com knows a thing or two about cybersecurity, hacking, and that whole ball of wax. And we tried to get him on tonight, but he wasn't available. But let's get your opinion on this very interesting situation that arose over the past couple of weeks with Kim.com. Well, first of all, Kim.com, I don't know if you guys know, the music that is our intro was actually composed by Kim.com. And Kim.com is also the person who's probably most responsible for getting Scott's Twitter, now X account, reinstated. And Kim.com had his own X account suspended recently. And what happened was he posted a picture that was one of the pictures from Hunter Biden's laptop that was already in circulation of him having sex with some female. And for that reason, he was suspended. Yeah. And X said, well, you're suspended because of child sexual exploitation. Now, Kim.com doesn't know how old this person is. He just posts a picture that's already out there in circulation. But here's where it gets interesting. If they're saying it was a minor, then what does that say about Hunter Biden? Kim.com's theory is that he must be under investigation by the FBI for endangering a child, and the FBI instructed X to not have this photo in circulation because of the investigation. And I'm like, well, why isn't this the number one story out there or one of the top stories?
It's chaos.
Thoughts? What do you think, Scott?
Because Hunter Biden's the son of the sitting president of the United States. Why isn't P. Diddy's tapes? Why aren't there? Why don't we know Epstein's client list? So why aren't there any prosecutions of that? Because everybody that's on there is part of the establishment, and the establishment protects the establishment. They will find a handful of people and they will throw the book at them. But those are the people that are on the periphery of this. I don't want to, I'm going to avoid getting sued, but you can go through and hear the names that people say. I will say this, what is it, John Legend and his wife, Chris something, they were asked about the freakiest thing at a P. Diddy party. And she said, the Obamas.
Oh,
and he went, I don't want to talk. And he was so uncomfortable.
Oh,
and
that's right.
She's like, oh, I shouldn't have said that.
She said, I'm in trouble now.
I'm in trouble now. This is why you're not going to see anything coming from the PDD, because that's the kind of people that are on there. All of the Hollywood elite, but it's not just them. It's every producer and everybody who funds the producer, all the political people that coordinate, that hang out with them. They are all done freakouts with P. Diddy, and they all have this on tape. This was, I think, who was it? Was it
Jay-Z or 50 Cent that said a while ago that P. Diddy's a Fed? He said he's a Fed. This is why Epstein, that was an Israeli Mossad operation.
Yeah.
And they have the goods on so many people. And so this is why you're not going to see any.
Okay, so that's a good explanation as to why, the Department of Justice isn't going after them and why the media isn't amplifying it.
Because the media is in the freakouts.
Right. But what about the podcast crowd, the people who are allies? They don't even seem to be saying much about it. And I mean, do you think that Kim.com's theory makes sense? The thing that may not be obvious, I think I sort of hinted at without saying it, is the reason he got Scott's account reinstated is because he has Elon Musk's ear. They are in touch with each other. But in this situation, Elon Musk didn't answer him and didn't give him any explanation. But after some period of time, the account was reinstated.
I think this gets into. Let me put it this way: if the name on that laptop was Scott Ritter, I'd be doing a 20 to 30 year stint in Leavenworth, California by now. It'd be over. They'd have thrown the book at me. There would have been a trial. There wouldn't have been a trial because the evidence is so overwhelming. My lawyer would have come in and said, don't take it to trial, plead guilty, do 20. That's the best you're going to get. And because you're guilty as sin. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about what that laptop shows. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about what that laptop shows. And I think what Kim.com was trying to do is expose the hypocrisy of the U.S. government and, by extension, X. If X is going to say what it said, then that means that they received a notice from the FBI, which means the FBI understands what that photograph is, but they haven't prosecuted yet.
Okay, so you're on board with his logic. Okay, and it
100.
makes sense to me. Yeah,
100.
it makes sense to me. But the question that's still unanswered is where is, Jimmy Dore and Max Blumenthal and Garland Nixon and all the other guys who would be likely to be screaming about this? I haven't heard any of that.
I mean, remember, Jeff, you didn't know about it. I found it. I pointed out his article. It's like he kind of silently put this out, Kim.com.
Yeah, that's true. He doesn't have as big an audience on Substack as he has on X.
Say it again, Scott.
It was a stealth move by Kim.com.
Totally.
Yeah, this sort of snuck in there, but I can't explain what I can say is, for instance, one reason why people might not want to do this is that these are some very powerful people out there, very powerful people. If you're a private citizen, the federal court system is not kind to you unless you have $1 million lawyers, and those $1 million lawyers are part of the establishment. Understand, you don't get to be $1 million lawyer by being out of the establishment. You're part of the establishment.
You're right.
And the other thing is that when the federal government seeks to use the power of the court to come after you, you can never win. You may win down the road, but you're going to lose because it's going to bankrupt you.
The process is the punishment, you're saying.
You're not going to have a jury of your peers.
You won't have anything. They will lie.
We just said it. I mean, we just said it. And what are they going to do? Our defense is we just simply publicize.
We're not trying to weaponize it. I mean, we're having a conversation here tonight. Yeah. Now, if we wanted to make this a crusade, if you wanted to make an operation, put Hunter in jail coin and start selling this thing, we want to raise money to put Hunter in jail.
That's not a bad idea.
Number one priority in life. We will now have FBI agents knocking on our door, and we will be hit with subpoenas, and we will end up going to court, and that will take over our lives, and that's the end of it. There was a guy that was
the greatest segue ever for the coin, Scott.
Thank you. I'm working on it. Yes.
ScottRitter.com. ScottRitter.com.
ScottRitter.com. No, I mean, but Operation Dawn, since we're talking about it, we are doing some things on Operation Dawn. To give you an example, this is something that you and I are going to talk about tomorrow when we do our phone call with Eisenhower Media Center. But there's an event in New York City on the 26th, and we have a chance to do a follow-up event the next day in New York City, and I'll talk to you more about that. But it is an Operation Dawn event. And then there will be Operation Dawn events in Washington, D.C. On the weekend of the 2nd and 3rd.
We hope to do some stuff in. Operation Dawn doesn't end on November 5th, because as anybody who's in the military knows, the last important step of leadership, your leadership principles is supervision, and whomever is elected president on November 5th must be held accountable by the American people, and that is a continuous process. So Operation Dawn will continue. And again, if Donald Trump is elected president, I can guarantee you I will be calling him a liar when he's a liar. I will be challenging him when he says stupid things, and I will be encouraging him to do the right thing, because that's what my job is as an American citizen. If Kamala Harris is elected as president, I will do the same thing to her.
We all have to do that.
We have to do it. If Jill Stein gets elected president, we will hold her accountable. So Operation Dawn doesn't end on November 5th, but what we'd like to do is, instead of being in a reactive mode, because that's what happens after November 5th, it's reactive mode. That's okay. That's standard. But we have an opportunity to be proactive right now, to proactively. And I keep, the funny thing is, people don't listen to me when I criticize everybody. I mean, they're like, because I criticize Donald Trump, everybody's going, that means you're voting for Kamala. No, I haven't said who I'm voting for. You won't know who I'm voting for until November 5th. I've said if you can't vote for Kamala and can't vote for Trump, a vote for Jill Stein might get her over the 5% threshold. But I've also said, and I said that's a good thing. It'd be nice to get a third party out there. So that's the direction. But if you want to stop a nuclear war, then we're talking about one of these two. And I've said they're weak on all sides. I mean, I'd love to see Kamala Harris get stronger on this issue. And I think Jill Stein is the vector for that. And so I will continue to push and push and push. And I will hold Donald Trump accountable. If he comes out with solid, you saw me when that op-ed piece came out, how positive I was. Positive I was. And
absolutely. That was a very notable thing, because I circulated
and everybody
it to
said,
all kinds
that
of
means
people.
you're voting for Trump. Yeah. As soon as I came out and said something positive, you're voting for Trump. You don't know what Operation Dawn stands for if you think I'm voting for Trump because of one damn op-ed piece. You vote for the candidate who on election day has articulated the best policy on how to prevent a nuclear war. That's my stance. And just because you did one thing right, then Donald Trump went and undid it all with the stupidity of his comments about Iran. And so now I feel that, he needs to repair the damage done. Look, his heart might be in the right place. He says, he understands the danger of nuclear war. And he clearly he likes the idea of denuclearization. Donald Trump, I would love to have a conversation with you. It will be top secret. I'm not going to spill the beans, but I want to teach you about disarmament and disarmament processes. Okay, I want to show you that John Bolton you should never talk to him again. Mike Pompeo is one of the most dangerous people on the planet. And, all the Billingsley, the guy you used to have in arms control, these are the wrong people. The people you need to bring in, frankly, the first head of arms control disarmament agency that I'd bring in would be RFK Jr.
Yeah.
Because RFK Jr. wants to follow in the footsteps of his uncle and do the right thing. And that would be, I know that Maha is his heart, but saving America from nuclear war should be his top priority. And RFK Jr. would be the best person to be the head of that. And if you can't make him head of it, because that would be something that has to be confirmed by the Senate, then make him your arms control advisor, put him in the National Security Council as a deputy national security advisor for arms control. And then you can decide how you want to emphasize that over other things. But make arms control your number one priority, Mr. And then what we can do is make sure when the book is written about Donald Trump, eventually, the final book, there will be a chapter in that book where you're sitting down with Vladimir Putin and you're at a conference. It could be in the United States, it could be in Russia, it could be in a third-party location. We'll make it nice so it's beautiful, cinematic. And we can have that moment where you're sitting here in the fireside chat with Vladimir Putin, just you, him, and some interpreters. And you say, let's get rid of nukes. And Vladimir Putin says, some? And you say, all. Let's get rid of them all. And you have that moment. See, you can go down in history as the guy who saved the world, Donald Trump. You can be that guy.
You could be the savior of the fucking world. But in order to have that conversation, you have to trust people to build an arms control apparatus that has legs, has substance. You need a new arms control and disarmament agency, and you need a visionary at the head of that agency. RFK Jr. would be brilliant for that. And if you can't get him in, make him the guy that advises the head of that. But that's what
this agency is not cabinet level, though, right?
Oh, you could make a cabinet. You could
You're the
president of the United States. Make it whatever the hell you want.
Well, that's what I was getting at, actually, is whether it's that specific role or not. Is it realistic for a president to get around when they want somebody to essentially be in the cabinet, but they can't get approved by the Senate? Is it realistic to essentially just treat them as a cabinet level person anyway, in an unofficial way, and to accomplish it? Is that doable?
Yeah, you do that through the National Security Council. You get a Tulsi Gabbard in there, and then she staffs her staff with experts. For instance, if RFK Jr. couldn't be confirmed as the head of ACTA, then he becomes the National Security Advisor for Arms Control. And if the Senate wants to play fuck games by not confirming your people, you put people in there who are holding a position, but you make sure that when you have your principals meeting down there in the White House Situation Room, and it's you and the principals, the head of State Department, Department of Defense, and all that, because the Senate played stupid games. You also invite the National Security Advisor, who's going to be there no matter what, but also the principals in there, and you say, all right, Secretary of State, I want you guys to you're going to be working with so and so here, arms control, everything's going to go through him. He's the honcho on this one. If that's how the Senate wants to play it, but normally what happens,
and that can be done openly too, right? I mean, it's not like illegal or an impeachment.
Not illegal at all. It's not illegal at all.
So
the president can do whatever the hell the president wants to do when it comes to executive decision.
So maybe people make too big a deal out of getting confirmed by the Senate.
No, it's not too big of a deal. It's an inefficient way of doing business, and what will happen is the agencies, because the National Security Council person doesn't have command authority over the State Department. The State Department can slow roll this and kill it and make it inefficient. What you want is your person at the head of state, because now that's the person who has executive control over the State Department. And what President Trump needs to do is go to the Senate and say, I'm putting names on here, and unless you find out that they've committed 15 felonies, they're the ones that you're going to put in. This is what I want. I'm insisting on this, and just put that marker down, and go to MAGA and say, you guys voted for me. 84 million Americans voted for me. This is the person I want at stake, and you got to make that case. And Donald Trump has to be willing to make that case. But see, Donald Trump, in the first time around, didn't want anybody that outshone him. And every time he talked to one of the people, it was always Donald Trump here, and here's my lesser being who's on my cabinet. Donald Trump this time around has to bring in people and say, this is the frickin' superstar of foreign policy.
Well, you say he doesn't listen to anybody, but didn't he listen to, not that we wanted him to, but didn't he in fact listen to Mike Pompeo?
No, Pompeo fucked him in the ass.
No, you mean like on the bad policies is what Jeff is saying.
Yeah, his policy was already made.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Pompeo who influenced him, for example, to treat Julian Assange harshly?
Well, I don't know that I don't know. I mean, maybe, but
that's the story.
Well,
anyway.
One thing for sure as to what you're saying, Scott, this would because Kennedy did the kinds of things that you're talking about, and if Trump were to do this, it would be like completing the mission that Kennedy tried to with Khrushchev to do back then, which was to eliminate these weapons. Jeff, did you see that we have a guest that has joined backstage?
No, I'm not. I didn't. I'm just pouring a second glass of wine.
Yeah. Well,
I guess I have to reorder my priorities.
I'm going to bring him on to the stage.
Okay.
Here. Our friend Kim.com.
The Kimster.
The whiners.
Yes.
Did you hear us talking about you?
No, I just remembered that you sent me an email and I had a bit of free time, so I joined.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Well, we
Oh,
were talking
wonderful.
about your dust up with Elon Musk, and we were speculating, but
Yeah.
now we can hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, ask me. What do you want to know?
Well, let's get it back on the screen so we remind people what we're talking about. What we're talking about is that you posted a photograph that was already in circulation all over the place.
Yep.
And X suspended your account because it was a violation of their child sexual exploitation policy.
Yeah.
And then you concluded, well, that must mean the FBI is investigating Hunter Biden for having sex with a minor. And Elon Musk wouldn't give you an answer. That's what we talked about. What
and
else?
we said that you had basically just kind of very quietly put this out on your Substack because everybody was saying, "Where's Kim?" And then I went and looked around, and then I found your article. I was like, "Holy cow, Jeff! You got to look at this right now. This is a big deal."
Yeah, I only have like 300 people following me on Substack because I only wrote
that's
two
why
things.
I think,
So it didn't get much attention. Yeah, but that's basically what happened. I got suspended because I made that tweet about Hunter Biden with a picture, like you said, that was already in the public domain for a long time because of this Biden report that contains all the data of Hunter Biden's laptop. And I was surprised when it happened, so I emailed Elon right away. Usually I get a reply, quickly. We do communicate, so I was surprised not to hear anything back from him about the suspension. And I also knew that a couple of friends have reached out to him and said, "Hey, what are you doing to Kim?" And again, nothing was done to remedy this. And I thought, well, this is interesting. There's something else going on, and that's why I was trying to think, what could that be? And my first, because I was a service provider myself, I know how it works. When you receive a takedown request about something that has to do with children, you escalate that to your top team in your fraud abuse department, and they are looking, really thoroughly at this, because in any jurisdiction, that is criminal, that is illegal, so you got to take it seriously. And before you take something down or make any allegations against a user, you really need to have some solid information behind that. So I assumed that there must be some kind of investigation, because otherwise, why would Elon be radio silent, and why would they do this unless there is some other element, a third party involved? And I thought, if the roles were reversed and I was Elon and I had some kind of FBI investigation into Hunter for this kind of content, then I would also not be allowed to comment in any way or reply to one of my users who's asking me to reinstate the account, right? So that was my initial inkling, and I just decided not to delete the post and not to acknowledge that I've done anything wrong in breaching the policy from X. And I wanted to see what happened. So I made an appeal. I said, what you're basically saying is you're making a claim that Hunter Biden is a pedophile. And if that's true, that's a pretty major story before a US election coming up in November. And I said, I'm not going to delete this because I haven't seen any evidence that anything in this picture is with a minor. This has been a report that has been used by the congressional investigation against Joe and Hunter Biden. And this evidence has been out there for a long time. So, if you shut down my account, you have to shut down basically every account that has ever posted a link to that material. And it took them over 2 weeks to write back to me, and they apologized. They said they're sorry for the inconvenience. They made a mistake. And my account is reinstated and my post is back online. And then I decided just not to tweet for another week because I kind of enjoyed the 2 weeks off, to be honest. It was quite nice, spending more
driving
time
us crazy.
spending more time with my family and just, having fun with my kids. And then basically just explained what happened, and here I am back causing mayhem.
Well, let me ask you what I asked Scott. Scott, by the way, thinks that your logic is solid, and he was saying, well, shouldn't be any big surprise why the Department of Justice isn't going heavy against him and why the mainstream media isn't playing this up. And I'm not asking this for the purpose of bad-mouthing our fellow podcasters. I'm asking it because I'm genuinely baffled. I haven't heard, that our peers, our colleagues, our kindred spirits in the podcast world amplifying this story. Is it because, like what you said, your Substack just doesn't get that much readership, or?
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of visibility other than X. I don't really use much other social media, but it was an interesting lesson for me. You realize how you are literally in a dark corner when you no longer have access to your DMs. I couldn't tell anyone who is, allied to me on X. I couldn't reach out to anybody. I usually don't have phone numbers of people that I communicate with on X. So I was really in a situation where I was completely cornered.
Well, do you want this story? Scott was saying we should be careful. I don't want to mischaracterize what you said, Scott, but I think you said something like, it's one thing to just talk about it and say Kim.com said it, but to make it some kind of campaign, we might get in the crosshairs of the powers that be.
I wouldn't have recommended it. And I told Scott that, just to better stay out of it, because it's just, it's going to sort itself out. I wasn't really panicked. I thought the longer this takes, the more interesting it's going to get. I wanted to see what X is actually doing. And I do know that a number of really large accounts have reached out to Elon without going public and saying, hey, this is not cool. What are you doing? And that kind of pressure got a bit bigger over time. And that helped resolve the situation. But I think X also realized that they are really not doing Hunter Biden a favor with this. This is a major problem. It's really optically, it's terrible for him. And if there is such an investigation, then the question is, what does Kamala Harris know about this? Shouldn't she be open about that before a major election? Is she backing the silence around this issue? And I think what happened here is when I made that tweet with that image, in the replies, immediately everyone was saying, this is a child. Some people said, is this his niece? Is this a lot of people were saying that. And I think that kind of may have contributed to it. I'm still trying to figure out what happened here, because this is very unlike Elon. And I was even thinking maybe it is because I criticized him a bit too much for his support of Netanyahu and his support of Israel, and how he did this knee fall after all the advertisers turned off X, and that was of course a Jewish group that pushed all that. And I have a feeling that his CEO advised him, make a peace tour, because there was an allegation of anti-Semitism against Elon because of a couple of tweets that he made. So he went and did this knee fall tour to Israel with Netanyahu, where he was shown a baby crib with bullet holes and all kinds of crazy stuff. And then he went to Auschwitz, and the whole thing seemed like he had to do this just to get his advertisers back, And ever since then, he's lost quite a bit of support because of that. People looked at that as not a good move. And he even went to Congress when Netanyahu came to the U.S. and he got an invitation, and he was sitting there clapping hands with all the people in Congress. They were all bored by the Israel lobby. Every single politician in there has received a shit ton of money from them, and that's the only reason why Netanyahu is having all this support, because the entire U.S. political system depends on these donations. So I think it could have been a reason that I maybe went a bit too far in my criticism of Elon.
I mean, we were just talking about this, with Scott and the presidential candidates. He criticizes them pretty equally. He also praises them when they deserve it, because as a citizen, we have to make whomever the next president is going to be better. So I don't necessarily see the criticism as bad. He might have not liked it, is maybe what you're saying, but you were doing it from the standpoint of an honest criticism. It wasn't just muckraking or trolling or something like that.
No, and it was also relevant because Joe Biden, Hunter's father, made a tweet complimenting himself for the creation of some anti-violence act against women that he championed. So he was bragging, look at me, I'm keeping women safe, and here's Hunter Biden brutally having sex with a young woman. I don't know if it's a girl or not, like a niner, I don't know that. But choking her. And then there are other photos in that same Biden report where you see clear, fresh, major bite marks on the leg of that girl. And, Hunter Biden filmed himself doing that and put that on his laptop. That's why these pictures exist. They're actually screenshots of him having filmed himself. And when you look at the totality of those images, it's pretty much the opposite of what Joe Biden was celebrating, no violence against women. Of course, some people are into that kind of stuff, when they get intimate. There's nothing wrong with that. But I just felt like, there's some evidence here that Hunter Biden is not really nice to women,
Yeah.
And that was the whole purpose for that post.
I like how you're not, panicking about figuring it out immediately, and you're, wrestling with possible interpretations here. But, let's remember, this was the story that should have been the October surprise in the last election, the Hunter Biden laptop story. Trump was kicked off of Twitter. The New York Post, which simply published its own story on Twitter, had its account suspended. And now here we are.
51 intelligence community members saying this is Russian disinformation, or it has the hallmarks of it. The whole thing was a complete scam of the American electorate. They were all lied to, and everybody knew it. And that's so shameful. And now it's happening again. I don't know if you saw this the other day. Kamala Harris did a 60 Minutes interview, and they edited it. So they made the mistake to first release a version that had the real answer that she was given in the video. So somebody downloaded that. And then later, the version that they published was the one where they took an answer from a completely different question and added it over the really bad answer that she gave before. And again, it's fraud. This is
it is
manipulating the electorate.
So how idiotic was her answer that CBS would do that, knowing that there's probably a good chance they'd be caught? They took that risk. It must have been unbelievably idiotic. We actually saw the part they edited. That was released, but we haven't seen the whole interview.
Yeah. No, they told them to do it. They didn't have a choice, and it was so bad. Like, have you read what she said in a quote? It's really sad. It's really so funny. Like, when you read it, it makes absolutely no sense, and it's so stupid. And they just had no choice, and that's why they kept her from giving any interviews, because they know she is terrible in interviews. Anything that isn't teleprompter
Right.
that isn't easy to do, where you just read some text off a screen. She is insanely bad.
Yeah. When you say they had no choice, do you mean there was a formal agreement, or you just mean on a practical level?
He's saying, I think he's saying that the administration called CBS and said, you change this. Isn't that what you're saying?
Well, it works a bit differently, right? CBS is controlled by, a Hollywood entity, and they are, of course, completely on the side of the Kamala campaign. They want her to win. Hollywood is, is providing support, not just financially to the campaign, but also all the celebrity endorsements are coming from them. So it's a huge effort to make sure that Kamala Harris wins. And the leadership of CBS would have watched this interview and said, holy shit, this is terrible. Let us fix it. And then the interviewer, I'm 100% sure, because he did actually ask some good, tough questions. I liked what he was doing. And he will be absolutely furious that his work was diminished to this degree of fraud, and that he now looks like an absolute clown. And if this guy has any integrity and isn't dependent on paying his mortgage and can just say it how it is, he should actually show that integrity and come out and say, this was done against my will, this is ridiculous, I would never have agreed with that, and just be transparent about it, because otherwise this guy's career is shot.
Yeah, there are plenty of people who are having successful careers as independent journalists and making a lot of money, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, just look at Scott. Holy shit.
I don't know.
Wait.
Scott, your microphone's off,
Scott.
Scott, you're muted. You're muted,
Scott.
I'm just kidding.
I'm just saying about the making money. I mean, we need to work on that part of it. But I would say this though, Kim. I agree with you. That 60-minute interview is one of the best interviews that's been done this election cycle. The quality of the questions, the preparedness of the interviewer, his ability to follow up, which is rarely done, to hold her feet to the fire. And yet to do it in a way that didn't come across as attack journalism. So I think that was one of the finest.
Sophisticated, deep,
100%.
Very, very good. Yeah, I agree.
And then they screwed it up. Then CBS, as you said, screwed it all up by throwing the integrity of his effort away down the drain by playing this stupidity. And again, I'm not a campaign, campaign law expert. But they prosecuted Trump for hiding or allegedly hiding payments to a porn star, because if that had come out, that could have influenced. Doesn't CBS come under some sort of scrutiny for deliberately misleading the public?
Some legal experts have come out with opinions about this, and CBS may be in trouble. This is something that could become a serious problem. The thing is, though, the election is so close now, it's not going to make a dent. It's not going to make a difference. I mean, CBS has done this to try and protect their favorite candidate. And I would not go as far as saying the White House called or Kamala's campaign called and said, hey, can we please change a couple things? I think if that would come out, that would be the end, because that would be a really big deal. And if there was a whistleblower like this journalist who did the interview coming out saying that this is what happened, it would be the end. So I can't think that they would take a risk like that, but they don't have to.
It's a gentleman's agreement.
Yeah, it's you don't even have to say it. They know that CBS is going to protect their favorite candidate, because if she wins, they're going to benefit. They may get some new copyright laws. They may get some more tax credits. Hollywood has always paid the Democrats a lot of money. 85 or 89% of the donations from all Hollywood studios go to the Democrats, and they've always done really well with that. My case is one example. The Democrats wanted to win the Obama re-election, and Hollywood threatened to not provide them with funding that year. And the message was delivered by a former senator who became the head of the MPAA, so basically the head of all the legal interests of the Hollywood studios. And he threatened that if you don't help us with our problems, we're not going to help you this year with your problems. And then boom, a couple months later, the attack happened against my business.
So you're saying you were the problem?
Yeah. So the problem was they wanted a law called the Stop Online Piracy Act. You may remember that.
Right.
So
Yes.
And people everywhere protested against it. It was a really big problem because they basically wanted to have total control over the internet and take anything down the moment they made a claim. And that wasn't flying with internet users. An election was coming up, and Obama said, we can't do this. This is too problematic. We're losing too many votes, too much support. What else can we do? And the case against Mega Upload is what the alternative, the plan B was. Take down a major international player. My business was 4% of all internet traffic. We had I think 180 million registered users, a pretty significant player on the internet, and they shut that down on piracy claims. And the funny thing is they did that ex parte without any hearing. The entire business was destroyed. Everything was shut down. All assets seized. Globally, it was a global operation without a single hearing on the merits. That's how it works now in the U.S.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about my case is, and that's why it's also so problematic for the U.S. government, is that the person who brought the case was put into the DOJ by Joe Biden himself. It was Joe Biden's previous lawyer when Joe Biden was still a senator. And that guy, Neil McBride, he later became a lobbyist for the Business Software Association, so fighting for more copyright. And that guy was put in the DOJ by Joe Biden. And the problem that they had is that because this guy was a lobbyist, under rules at that time, he could not just go to the DOJ. There would have been a time period in which, he had to pause before he could take any kind of government job. But they waved him through without the required White House waiver, because he was a lobbyist, and put him in the DOJ anyway. And that guy then brought the case against me, which destroyed Mega Upload. Another funny side story, they then handpicked the judge who was on my case, because in the district where I was charged, the judge of the day is the so-called duty judge. So all they had to do was wait for the judge that they knew they wanted, filed the case on that day, and then had the guy that they wanted. And that judge was a lawyer for Disney, had Disney as their biggest client. And not only that, while he was bringing all these actions against my business and completely destroyed it and declared me a fugitive, so I could not even appeal to any of his decisions, that guy was also a shareholder of Disney throughout the whole process. And when we found out, he had to recuse himself, but the damage was already done. The business was destroyed. And that guy, clearly a beneficiary for many, many years of Disney money, was Disney one of the parties in my case against me, has not disclosed his holdings of Disney shares and his history as a Disney lawyer, and was given the opportunity to destroy one of the largest online businesses at the time. So when you look at all of this, right, it's a super corrupt case, and it's a very political case that's going on.
When they say there's no such thing as the deep state, we need to take what Kim.com just said and have that as the clip that says, really? Because everything Kim.com just said proves without a shadow of a doubt that there's a deep state. This is how the deep state works. It's basically elites that get gathered at the top, and then they get shuttled around. And
the judge picking thing. It's a huge problem in America. I can guarantee you this: it's the same way when you want to get a search warrant served. As long as it's not if it's an emergency search warrant, then you call up any judge you want to because it's an emergency. But you wait for the day that your judge is the judge that's doing search warrants for the day, and that's the judge that you've been drinking beer with, playing golf with, that you're buddies with, and you come in, and the judge isn't going to ask any of the questions that need to be asked. The judge isn't going to, protect the Fourth Amendment rights of anybody. The judge is going to sign off on probable cause that's razor thin, and do it. And that's what happened. I can guarantee that's happened to me because they had no probable cause. I mean, look, it's over 2 months now since they took my computers. Silence.
And your passport and all of that.
And they won't even answer me on the passport. I've been writing and writing and writing. I call and they say, we can't talk about it. You have to write us a letter. So I sent them a letter, certified, return receipt, the whole thing. Silence, crickets. They don't want me traveling. And they're going to, at some point in time, I'll have to take action, but we really need to find out what the hell's going on with their search warrant. We need them to actually, but there's other things I can't talk about right now, but there's reason to believe that they know that they have nothing on this and they're looking for other things. And
but also, Scott, they doxed you, and then part of that swatted you. That's what I'm sorry, swatted you, and then Kim, I think in the raid, correct me if I'm wrong, the FBI was a part of that raid. And my thought is, why is the FBI doing anything off the soil of the United States in the first place? They're not even supposed to have that jurisdiction.
So when the raid happened, there was a shit ton of Americans over here. And the entire raid was conducted by 72 police officers. Some of them arrived in 2 separate helicopters at my house, armed with Bushmaster automatic rifles with silencers on them, kicking in doors, arresting everyone with the tech dogs. They brought these dogs that are like really, pushing to try and bite you, and they scared my kids and my pregnant wife, and it was really unbelievable. And the funniest thing is that the Prime Minister of New Zealand, by the way, a raid like this never happened in this country, especially not in a copyright case. I mean, just to make clear, I'm not a terrorist.
Right.
I'm not someone who's wanted for gun or drug trafficking.
Right.
I'm an internet nerd, right, who had a website where people could upload and download files, and they raided me like I'm Bin Laden. They actually used more people to raid me than Osama Bin Laden. So when all of this happened, of course, it was a major story in New Zealand, and everyone was like, holy shit, who is this guy? Right. And the Prime Minister of New Zealand claimed that he had no prior knowledge of this, that he was totally, no one informed him that this may happen. The whole thing turned out into a total shit show in New Zealand because I found out that the New Zealand government was spying on me using the GCSP, their local spy agency, which is the equivalent of the NSA in the US. And then what the GCSP did, they did all that spying, and they put it in a shared spy cloud where the NSA could then access the data. So it was actually the NSA spying on me, utilizing the New Zealand spy agency. And I found out because they rerouted my internet traffic, and I'm a gamer. I play video games. So all of a sudden my latency increased and I wasn't hitting my shots. Right. Now
it's getting serious.
Yeah, no, it's getting serious.
And then he did a speed test. He did a speed test, and my IP address has changed. What's going on?
Now I know why my DPS has dropped on World of Warcraft.
Yeah, exactly. So what they did, they rerouted my traffic. So that's why after the raid, I knew, okay, they've done something to my traffic, and I instructed my lawyers what to ask in court and what documents to file, because I knew they spied on me. Yeah. And we did get to the bottom of it. And in the end, the Prime Minister of New Zealand had to apologize for illegally spying on me and 82 others.
Wow.
And it became a major story in New Zealand, but no one was ever held accountable. They just changed the law to make it legal to spy on New Zealand residents. That was the result. But another very interesting story, because we were talking about the US judge. We had an expert copyright judge in New Zealand initially on my case. And that guy was actually involved in drafting the New Zealand Copyright Act. So a very knowledgeable guy. And in the first hearing that we had, the judge made a very astonishing comment. He said, this is a civil case. Why are we here, talking about criminal charges and conspiracy and all this stuff? This is not a criminal case. And guess what happened? They removed the judge from my case. They moved him away from my case, and they put a guy in who had absolutely no clue about the internet or copyright or anything. That guy ended up taking 89% of what the Crown and US lawyers had presented in my extradition hearing and pasted that into his judgment. That is the degree of bullshit that I had to deal with here in New Zealand. Another funny story, New Zealand has a safe harbor law for internet service providers. So if you are like me, an internet service provider, where you host user-generated content, based on this New Zealand law, I can never be civilly or criminally liable for what users do. Because the allegation from the US indictment is not that I'm a pirate, that I uploaded some pirated videos and made them available. It's all user content. They say I have a criminal liability for what users have done on my website, even though my website clearly stated you cannot do piracy. It's against our rules, It's against our terms of service. And we've taken everything down. We have like a perfect takedown record of 99.99%. And even further, we gave 180 major copyright holders direct delete access to our servers. So if they saw something online that they claimed was their property, they could take it down instantly without us even being involved.
Kim, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, what did you want to say?
I was just going to say, this reminds me of this Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act.
Yeah, which they want to change now. They want to get rid of that to put pressure on social media sites.
Similar.
But, so back to the safe harbor, right? This safe harbor is an absolute end of the case. If I was, if my case was heard in New Zealand, it's game over, because they would have to prove that this doesn't apply, and they can't. So what the US is trying to do, they want to get around that. They don't want me to have that kind of protection in New Zealand, so they need to extradite me, because in the US there is no comparable safe harbor. That is the big issue that they have with me being in New Zealand. That's why they need to extradite me, because if my case was heard in New Zealand, I would walk out and it would be done. And
so
they
you couldn't use Section 230 as a defense?
Well, that's not based on New Zealand law. That's a U.S.
That's a U.S. law.
In the U.S. you have a thing called DMCA that is providing provider protection, but in civil cases, right? But the New Zealand law trumps the U.S. law, because it provides a safe harbor that any of these allegations that have been made against me even have any legal basis. And this is why, they really try to extradite me. But they made a big mistake. My co-defendants, who have said for a decade that they've done nothing wrong, they were charged with a conspiracy crime like me. I'm facing 186 years in jail because of all the charges that they mounted up in my case. It's actually hilarious for a copyright case. So anyway, they, my co-defendants, after 10 years, they gave up. They said, look, we're doing a plea deal. We agree that we've done something wrong. And they reduced their charges from 186 years down to 10 months. So they spent 10 months in a New Zealand jail and are now out free and out of the case. The beautiful thing is, in order to achieve this, they they dealt with them under the New Zealand courts. So they had to plead guilty in a New Zealand setting, in the New Zealand jurisdiction. And if my co-defendants can do that, they need to extend the same right to me. Why do I even need to get extradited if they can deal with my co-defendants in the New Zealand courts? So the Justice Minister has recently made the decision that I can be extradited, and our judicial review of that decision is going to include the question, how the hell can my co-defendant be dealt with in the New Zealand courts and I can't? And the very reason is that there is a safe harbor here in New Zealand that protects me absolutely. No charges, not even civil, would survive if my case would be heard in New Zealand. And when you do something like an extradition, you need to look at what is the law in New Zealand and what is the law in the United States. And if something isn't a crime in New Zealand, how can we send someone away to a different jurisdiction where it is a crime? You see, that is what the courts will have to deal with in the next couple of years in my appeals.
When is the next phase of your litigation? Something going to happen? Do you know, or you're completely in the dark about that?
Well, we filed our judicial review. So I think that will first go to the High Court in Wellington. That is the first instance that will hear it. And then if we lose, we can appeal it to the Court of Appeal. And if we lose, we can appeal it to the Supreme Court. So that's still going to be some time.
Yeah. Well, luckily, it seems like you cope with it very well. I don't know if you're just putting up a brave front, but it really seems like you're not stressed out.
No, after 12 years, I'm not faced anymore. And by the way, the world is blowing up. It's going to total shit. By the time my case is over, we either had World War III or a nuclear confrontation, or the U.S. government is completely collapsing under its debt, and with the current changes with BRICS and turning the world into a multipolar world, with the US dollar no longer being the reserve currency. And when that happens, how are you going to print the money to fund your $4 to $6 trillion a year deficit without having hyperinflation? It's just not going to happen. So the next couple of years, I'm just an observer. And I'm looking at what the worst case is going to be,
Kim, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
It's a very serious question. You probably need to think long and hard on this one.
Okay.
So let's say I were to get my passport back and fly to New Zealand.
Yeah.
This $50 an hour gig you got going as your gardener. Does it include, is it a potential for room and board? I mean, can I bring a tent, pitch a tent or something? I mean, are there any more incentives you can throw in there? Can I bring Maverick?
Yeah.
You have to pick up after
we should
Maverick.
tell the audience what Scott's talking about, right?
Right, Kim, you're looking for a gardener, right?
Yeah, you put that on your X feed, right?
Yeah, I am.
We can help you get it. We can help you.
Scott, you're overqualified. You're definitely
trust me, at this point in the time to get away from the world caving in on itself, I'm thinking gardening in New Zealand in a beautiful location in the southern part of the New Zealand island chain might be an alternative to nuclear Armageddon. So,
well, the funny thing is that is why I live here. I moved here because I could see where things are heading. After the speech of Putin in Munich, the famous multipolar order speech, where basically the whole thing started. Putin is basically the man behind BRICS. That's his brainchild. He got the Chinese to come on board, and they really wanted to change the world away from unipolarity, away from the US controlling everything, especially after the financial crisis in 2008, because that's when those countries said we can no longer trust the stewardship of the United States to take care of the global financial system, because that financial crisis happened because of all the gambling that the US banks did on the markets, right? So that's kind of where BRICS came from. The multipolarity idea was Putin's, but then the financial crisis happened and BRICS was established to basically create an alternative financial system. And when I saw all that, I was like, this is going to lead to world war. There's no way that this is going to happen without a major confrontation between the US, Russia, and China. So I looked at the map and I said, what's the best place in the worst case scenario where you can survive? And it was either the southern tip of Chile, and there isn't much there, or the South Island of New Zealand. So where I am now, if there is a nuclear war, I know everyone is talking about nuclear winter and all that bullshit. This is the place you want to be if you want to survive. We'll have a very the mildest nuclear winter of all nations. You know, we'll be over after 10 years, and you can rebuild humanity basically from New Zealand and the southern part of Chile.
You know,
and you
Kim,
will need a gardener during that entire.
That's the downside.
Unfortunately, Jeff, Kim, and Ryan, I've got to run because I have a commitment at 9:00. But it's been an honor and a privilege to be a guest. Kim, it was an absolute pleasure to talk with you again, and I hope we get to do it down the road. But again, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Kim,
thanks, Scott,
for having me on.
Thank you,
All right, Scott.
Take care.
Have a good day.
Hey, Kim, before we say goodbye to you, I want to just thank you for giving us permission to use your song. I don't know if you've heard it. We are, when you were on Ask the Inspector, whenever it was a few weeks ago, we played your song "Good Life," and I'm listening to it. I'm going, wait a minute, that is like a perfect fit for the Whiners. So thanks for giving us permission. Yeah, and we are in fact using it as the intro. Have you heard it? The way we're using it?
Yeah, I made the song.
Yeah, no.
I know you heard the song, but have you heard
our intro?
Yeah, I can imagine how it sounds. It's my song.
Right. I know you did this. My questions aren't that stupid, Kim.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, the intro isn't that great. Yeah, the music part.
I've never been drunk, so if the Whiners is about the enjoyment of alcohol, I'm the worst person on this podcast.
Well, it's whiners for wine and whining about what's going on in the world also.
Now I get it. All right.
The good life, whether or not you're drinking wine.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Actually, really, I mean, the audio part is great. We have to do a better job on making a good video opening, but we're gonna do that.
So, sure. Kim, I wanted to one thing that you just went through on the BRICS, and I know we might be ending shortly, but in the last 24, 48 hours, I don't know if you know Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad, who was the Prime Minister of Malaysia. He's 99, and it's interesting the way you said things, because he said that the world has to get out of this this confrontation, and he said it's basically time to have a new non-aligned movement again, where we just don't get into these divisions. Of course, it's anti-unipolarity, as you were saying, but these conflicts. So I think there's a lot of hope that something could actually be organized, and it seems like we're going to have to do it. With your help, with Scott's help, Jeff, me, a few others too, we know out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's inevitable. You know, the world is really tired of the way the West has handled affairs. We have more crisis in the world than ever. It's just not a safe place when the U.S. government starts seizing governments' assets from other countries. And putting all these sanctions everywhere to put their will on everybody. And I think the momentum is too great now to stop it. There's this big BRICS event coming up in Russia shortly. And I think they have about a dozen countries signing up. So they're already bigger than the G7. And they're going to increase their size even more. And all these countries have now basically agreed to join into this new financial system, which allows them to trade amongst each other without utilizing US dollars.
Correct.
And on the back end, the whole banking system is no longer based on SWIFT, so they will have their own clearance system that runs completely outside of the current Western financial system.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means ultimately is that the volume of US dollars in global trade is going to come down significantly over time. And it means that central banks around the world will have less US dollars as a reserve. They will look at other currencies, they will diversify more. And what that means, US government bonds will become less attractive. The US dollar itself will become less attractive. And that is actually the biggest problem for the United States because they are so highly indebted. They need, the only tool that they now have to raise more money is to print more money. And they have printed money on the backs of all of the nations that have used the US dollar as the reserve currency.
Right.
When that falls away, all the money that they print will be subject to inflation much greater than in the past. We are even talking about hyperinflation scenarios.
Weimar.
Similar to Weimar, yeah. We're talking about a depression level event like the 1930s in the US, because when your system is collapsing because no one wants to use your currency anymore because you have abused it so much and inflated it so much and you're printing so much of it, and now you can no longer do that on the back of the entire world, everything is going to collapse. The amount of debt that the US government has and the amount of money that it needs is mind-boggling, and they cannot achieve any kind of turnaround when they are no longer the reserve currency. And this is where, we're talking about World War III without guns. If the BRICS nations can pull this off, it's over for the United States.
And the only solution for the United States, sane solution, is to return to being a productive industrial physical economy and not this corporatist financial swindling operation.
Yeah, but only after a major decline.
Yeah, or an orderly bankruptcy reorganization, like sort of like what happened in the 1930s. Here. Of course, that was after the 29 Depression.
Do you see the U.S. government doing that, accepting that they have mismanaged their finances and that they are no longer the number one and that they will have to drop a couple of ranks, not just one rank or two ranks, but a couple of ranks in order to survive this thing? And then you have the Americans who are going to be absolutely mad about how they have been led into this enormous trap, where living standards in the United States are going to drop significantly, not just a bit. Like the homeless crisis that you have now will be tenfold or more what it is now. Unemployment will explode to 30-40% in the United States.
Probably the only modern comparison that I know of in terms of my reading is what was done to Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. But that would be something now that we would do to ourselves, essentially, through this policy.
Yeah. The thing is, similar to the Soviet Union, which basically, was completely bankrupt and totally destroyed and had to get rid of territories because they couldn't fund basic services to the people living there anymore, right? That is what awaits the United States. The collapse that we've seen in the Soviet Union, similar to that, will be in the US. And I don't really see any way out. Whoever the next US president is going to be will have to be a crisis president, will have to be someone who can competently navigate all the problems that are going to come with that big crash.
Well, two quick questions before we say goodnight about that election, Kim. The first one is, who do you want to win the U.S. presidential election? And the second one is, who do you predict will win?
Who do I want? I mean, they're both terrible. Let's be honest, but Trump is probably the one who may not go into a global thermonuclear war just to cover up the mismanagement, that happened in the U.S. financial and economic system. He is probably also the one who is slightly more capable of managing a crisis like this. The only problem is, when you look at what he says and what he actually does, that has been my issue with him.
It's chaos.
In his first presidency, prior to that, he made a lot of promises of draining the swamp and fixing a lot of things, that are problematic. And then he pointed all the warmongers, all the wrong people that all backstabbed him. He hasn't really had a chance to get anything done because of the poor choices that he made and the people that he appointed. And I just don't know if I hope he's learned enough from that. I really hope that he has a better understanding now, who he can trust and who can work with and what needs to be done to get out of this dilemma. But I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, someone who makes such bad choices, I hope he has learned from it.
Any predictions about who will win?
I think they will cheat. I'm 100% sure they will do whatever it takes to prevent a Trump presidency, because here's the reality of the situation. Whoever wins this election will be the only party that survives. If the Democrats win and they legalize all the illegal aliens that they have imported into the United States, which will all be turned into voters, you will have no swing states anymore, and they will win outright. It will be a one-party system. If Trump wins, they understand this now. The Republicans understand this now. So if Trump wins, he will go in with a major deportation plan to get rid of all of these people that came into the country illegally. If they do that, if they clean up house and really get enough of them out over the next 4 years, if he wins the election, then they will become the only party in the U.S. that's going to win elections.
Well, do you think cheating can make the difference if it would, if it were a clean election, if it were going to be like, let's say, a landslide or something close to that? Can cheating overcome that, or can cheating overcome only if it's a close election?
They can cheat in so many ways, right? You have election machines that are basically computers that can be manipulated. You have now not even the requirement for voter ID. So, a lot of these people that they imported will be told, if you want to stay in the United States, if you want to have your couple $1,000s a month, if you want to have your free phone and your free home and your free food, you need to figure out how to go there and vote. So they're already going to use the people that are here, and you see in the moves that Democrats are making that they want to prevent that people have to actually present voter ID. And when that's the case, then you have no way of knowing, was someone a fraudulent voter or a legitimate voter. So, this is where it's heading. They're really going to try everything necessary to stop Trump.
All right, well, find us a good apartment or house or something in New Zealand. We'll see you in a couple of months.
I'll take a cave.
You can all come for a visit, no problem.
Yeah. All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kim. It's always a pleasure to talk. Hopefully it won't be too long before we have another opportunity. Appreciate it.
All right. Good talking.
Thank you very much.
All right.
All right.
Take
bye-bye.
care.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
All right, tomorrow night on Ask the Inspector, our special guest is Rachel Blevins. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And big thanks to Scott Ritter and Kim.com for joining us tonight. And happy birthday to my good friend Ryan.
We the people, we're going to have to do this.
Yeah, I love the marketing. I haven't tasted that wine yet, but I love the shtick, the We the People shtick. I want to try that. All right, take care, everybody. We'll see you next week at 7 p.m. Eastern Time with episode 6 of The Whiners. Bye-bye, everybody.